Good afternoon, students, and welcome back to the class of Macroeconomics SY BCom. In previous classes, we have discussed about the quantity theory of money, and we have also discussed about the various criticisms of quantity theory of money given by Irving Fisher. Now, today we are going to start with the another version of quantity theory of money, which is known as a Cambridge version of quantity theory of money. So, we will be discussing about the Cambridge cash balance approach to QTM. Now, before that discussing this theory in detail, we should have some information and the background about that why this theory came into existence and who gave this theory. So, the QTM was first propounded by the Irving Fisher in 1911. So this theory was more popular and it is accepted by entire world till 1917. Now in the year 1917, another economist known as Alfred Marshall and A.C. Pigou, they have given another theory which is known as a cash balance approach to QTM. Now the transaction version of QTM, which is given by Irving Fisher, uh, was mainly concerned with the transaction motive or first function of money, that is medium of exchange. So this development of QTM has that gained lot of that accumulation from the people, and this QTM was propounded by the Irving Fisher, who was American economist. So the people from Cambridge School or Cambridge University, they realized that QTM is gaining so much importance in the world. So they tried to represent their own views in a different manner. And in the year 1917, that A.C. Pigou has written a book known as The Value of Money, and he and Alfred Marshall, both of them have propounded a theory known as a cash balance approach to QTM. Now, this approach was prepared by the experts or the scholars of Cambridge University. That is why it is sometimes known as a Cambridge version of QTM, or the parameter which they have considered here is cash balance rather than cash transaction. So this approach is also known as a cash balance approach. Now, in previous theory that is given by Irving Fisher, he has considered the only transaction motive of money. That means he considered money as a medium of exchange, whereas the Cambridge cash balance approach consider the store of value function of money. So they have considered that money is not only demanded for the purpose of buying goods and services, but money is also that demanded by people to hold as a cash or to keep it as a ready cash or idle cash, so that they can take advantage of making investment or speculative purposes. That is why Keynes has also joined this group. So this Cambridge cash balance approach is mainly concerned with the Alfred Marshall, A.C. Pigou, J.M. Keynes, and Robertson. They have propounded or they have given a views regarding the cash balance approach. So if you remember, before discussing the QTM, while discussing demand for money, we have already discussed that Keynesian liquidity preference theory. So liquidity means cash. So why people prefer to hold the cash? So in that, Keynes has given three motives for holding cash. That is your transaction motive, precautionary motive, and speculative motive. So the first motive, that is transaction motive, was given importance by the Irving Fisher, and he has propounded a theory known as a cash transaction approach, whereas the other two functions were ignored, that is speculative and precautionary motive. So this approach is considering the another two functions of money, that is your speculative and that precautionary motive. So that is why this is known as a cash balance approach. Now, after having this background, we will study that what cash balance approach has to say about the QTM. So the cash transaction approach to the quantity theory of money has been widely popular in United States due to the work of Irving Fisher in the year, in 20th century, in the year 1911 till 1917. That is for a period of 6 years. In contemporary Europe, however, a slightly different approach known as the cash balance approach was developed, particularly by Cambridge economists like Marshall, Pigou, Robertson, and J.M. Keynes. The cash balance approach emphasizes the store of value function of money rather than the medium of exchange function. Similarly, this approach is based on the demand for and supply of money at a particular point of time rather than over a period of time. If you remember, in Fisher's equation, we are having the equations mv is equal to pt, where v indicates velocity of money. Now v is over a period of time. If you remember, while discussing the criticisms, we have discussed that it is illogical to multiply two components which are referring to a different point of time. So we have seen m indicates a particular point of time, whereas v indicates over a period of time. So when we multiply m and v, it will give you the false result or wrong interpretation. That is why that was the one of the criticism of Fisher's QTM. Now, rather than referring to a point of time, this theory is concentrating on the over a period of time. So, QTM was concerned only about the demand for money at a particular period of time. But in this, we are referring to a particular point of time. The equation of this approach came to be known as a cash balance equation or Cambridge equation, because it is formulated by the economist from Cambridge University. Now we have to understand that why the money is demanded and who supplies the money, because we are going to make use of the demand and supply equation. So we know that according to QTM version given by the Irving Fisher, he considered that money is demanded only for one purpose, that is medium of exchange. But in this analysis, we are including other two functions also. So according to this, according to the cash balance version, the demand for money arises not only for the purpose of exchange transaction, but also for the purpose of speculation and precaution. So it is not necessary that people will spend immediately all the money that they have with them on exchange transaction. They will keep certain money as a cash with them, or they will save. So in Irving Fisher's equation, we are considering that entire money which is received by a person will be spent on the transaction. Whereas in this analysis, we are assuming that a person is not going to spend the entire money or entire income which he is having on transaction purpose. He may keep certain money for the speculative and precautionary motive also. So money, besides performing the function of medium of exchange, also act as a store of value. Money can be preserved as a form of wealth or as an asset which can be most conveniently converted into any other form of wealth at any time. If you remember, we have discussed the concept of near money. So in that we have seen that near money are those assets which can be converted into money form. So the people also demand money for the purpose of that keeping it in the form of a near money rather than spending it completely on transaction purpose. That is why in this we are considering the precautionary and speculative motive also along with transaction motive. Now, as far as the supply of money is concerned, the supply of money is a stock, or it refers to a particular point of time. It is given and constant. So, it is composed of all the cash and deposits subject to withdrawal by check. That means, if you remember, we have discussed that money supply concept. While discussing about the money supply concept, we have seen it is C plus BD plus OD. C indicates currency in circulation in the form of currency notes and coins, and DD means demand deposit. So that is why in this concept of supply of money, we are not only concerned about the cash, but we are also including the money which is available in the form of a bank deposits. So supply is exogenously given. That means supply is externally given. It is not changing. It is not in the control of that any person. It is given by the monetary authority, or we can say the legal authority of money is going to decide the supply of money. So it is assumed to be given. So after studying these two concepts, now we have to understand that what does the cash balance approach says. So explanation of cash balance approach is that people desire to hold certain amount of money, that is purchasing power, in the form of cash balance, which constitutes demand for money. That means people are not only demanding for transaction purpose, people are demanding for the purpose of speculation and precaution also. If you remember, while discussing about the Keynesian liquidity preference theory, we have discussed three motives: your precautionary motive, transaction motive, and speculative motive. In that, we have seen precautionary and transaction motive depends upon income, whereas speculative motive depends upon rate of interest. So there are two motives for keeping money cash. One is your transaction, another is your precaution, and third one is your uh, speculative motive, which is function of your rate of interest. Since the demand for money determines the aggregate purchasing power of money supply, it happens that with a given demand, the purchasing power of each unit of money varies inversely with the quantity of money, and the price level varies directly with the quantity of money. That means whenever there is a change in the quantity of money, the price level is going to change in the same proportion in which quantity of money is changing. That this concept was also explained in the QTM version of Irving Fisher. So the price is varying directly with quantity of money, whereas the purchasing power of money varies inversely with the quantity of money. Further, on the other hand, the supply of money is remaining constant. The value of money, that is the price level, depends upon the changes in the demand for holding money or cash balance. Thus, a rise in the demand for money would mean less demand for goods and services, as the people can have large cash holdings only by reducing their expenditure on goods and commodities. Accordingly, the price level will fall and the value of money will rise, and opposite will be the case if there is fall in the demand for money. Now let us take an example. What this paragraph want to say, I'll explain you. Like we have seen the demand for money. Generally what happened, we have seen there are three motives: precautionary, transaction, and speculative. So if people want to keep more money for a transaction purpose, then the money available for speculative purpose will be less. So that is why if people are keeping more money as a idle cash, or people are holding money for their precautionary motive or speculative motive, then the transactions will decrease. Transaction will decrease. That means the demand for goods and services will decrease. That is why it is written in the first paragraph that less demand for goods and services. So let us say if the demand for goods and services is reducing, then what will happen? What producer will do? If I as a producer, I am experiencing that there is no demand for my product. So in order to sell my product in the market, what I'll do? I have to reduce the price of my product. So as soon as I'll reduce the price for my product, the purchasing power of people will automatically increase. That means the person who was able to purchase my commodity earlier in 100 rupees, now he will be able to purchase more commodity in the same 100 rupees, or he can purchase the old quantity with a less than 100 rupees. That means when the price falls, the consumer is saving certain amount of money. That money he will hold as a cash for speculative or for other purposes, keeping money in the form of a near money asset. So whenever there is a reduction in the demand for goods and services, it will result into less price, and whenever price falls, the value of money rises. If you see in the third last line, it is written, when the expenditure on goods and services are reduced, the price level will fall and the value of money will rise. So the reason for falling the price level is that people are demanding less money for the transaction purpose. So when they will demand less money for the transaction purpose, their that real income or purchasing power is going to increase. And opposite will be the case, if the price is rising, the purchasing power of person will decrease. So that is why there is an inverse relation between the price and purchasing power of a person. Now, cash balance equation, which is given by the Pigou. The cash balance equation have been given by Marshall, Pigou, Robertson, and Keynes. Pigou's equation is expressed in the following form: P is equal to K into R upon M. Now here, the P is not representing price. We have to remember, don't get confused, because in transaction equation, that is in case of Fisher's equation, that is your MV is equal to PT. In that equation, P indicates price level, whereas in the cash balance approach or the Pigou's equation, P indicates purchasing power of money, not price. So don't get confused with the P. So if you see that P represents the purchasing power of money, that is the value of money, and value of money is inversely related with the price level. We have seen in the previous slide that whenever there is a fall in the price level, the value of money is increasing. That means now I am able to purchase more commodity with the same amount of money. Take an example. If I am having 100 rupees with me and the price of any commodity is 20 rupees per unit, so I will be able to purchase only 5 units of a commodity with 100 rupees. Now if the price falls from 20 rupees to 10 rupees, I will be able to purchase 10 units with the same 100 rupees. So the value of my 100 rupee has increased, or my purchasing power have increased. So what happened to price? Price level has reduced, so my purchasing power have increased. That means there is an inverse relation between the price level and purchasing power. So whenever the price level increases, purchasing power decreases, and whenever price level decreases, purchasing power increases. So that is why P indicates purchasing power, not money. Not price level. K represents the proportion or percentage of total real income which people would like to hold as a cash. Again, you have to remember here we are K is representing the proportion of real income, not nominal income. Nominal income is your money income. Real income is your, that when you multiply the price with total income, you will be when you divide your nominal income with the price, you will be able to get a real income. That means real income is nothing but it is your purchasing power. So real income is represented with the help of R. R indicates your real income. See, that is why in the below line, you can see that R represents the total real income in terms of any particular commodity, say wheat. Real income is not expressed in terms of money. Real income is expressed in terms of particular commodity. M represents the total quantity of money. So M is a total quantity of money. P is a value of money. K is a proportion or fraction of total real income which people would like to hold as a cash. R represents the total amount of real income expressed in terms of commodity. Now, if we'll see with the help of example, now according to the above equation, P is the purchasing power of money or the value of money, which varies directly with K. It is directly related with the K or R and inversely related with the M. That means quantity of money. We have seen in the previous slide that it is inversely varying with the quantity of money. That means this means that the price level varies inversely with K or R and directly with M. That means price level varies directly with M, that is your quantity of money. If P is now interpreted with price level as in Fisher's equation. In Pigu's equation, P represents value of money. In Fisher's equation, it represents price level. So if we are considering that P in case of Fisher's equation, then your Pigu's equation can be rewritten in the following manner. So in this equation, P is equal to M upon KR. That is opposite. So value of money is opposite of your price level. We have seen inverse relation. That means when price will increase, your value of money will fall. When your price will decrease, your value of money will increase. So that is why in Pigu's equation, P is representing value of money, not price. So what we have to do, we have to reciprocal or we have to reverse the equation in order to know the P. Opposite, inverse relation. So that is why P is equal to M divided by K into R, or we can say M is equal to PKR. In Pigu's equation, it is K and M. Sorry, in Pigu's equation, it is K, not M, which is more important determinant for the price level. So in Pigu's equation, it is K. K is more important, but in Fisher's equation, it is M, which is more important. So this is the difference between these two equations. Now we'll see an example. Suppose, for example, the real income of community is expressed in terms of wheat is rupees 1000 quintal. That means the value of wheat is worth rupees 1000 quintal, and people would like to keep 1/5 of this real income in the form of money. 1/5, 1 by 5, that is 0.25, sorry 0.2. If the total income of money is rupees 2 lakh, then P will be calculated as M divided by K into R. So M is your money, quantity of money, that is 2 lakh rupees. Your K is 1/5, 1 by 5, that is 0.2. R is given real income 1000. So when you multiply 0.2 with 1000 and 2 lakh will be divided by 200, so you will get a 1000. So price will be 1000. Thus the price of wheat should be rupees 1000 per quintal. At this level of price, the total supply of money is equal to the total demand for money. That means supply and demand will be equal. So there is no overproduction. Either there is no more demand, no less supply. So demand and supply both will be equal, and it is indicated by the PKR. So what we have seen in the above formula, we have seen that M is equal to P into KR. So we have got this 1,000 rupees. Now we'll see whether your money demand is equal to that PKR or not. So further, the equation is M is equal to P into K into R. So we know total availability of money supply is, you can take in this equation that it is written that total quantity of money is rupees 2 lakh. So we have written on the left hand side rupees 2 lakh, and P is price is how much we have calculated in previous equation, it is 1,000 rupees. And what is K? K is fraction of that money that people would like to hold as a cash. It is 1/5, 1 by 5, that is 0.20. And R is real income, 1,000. So when we will multiply 1,000 multiplied by 0.20 into 1,000, so we will get a 2 lakh equal to 2 lakh. That means demand for money is equal to supply of money. So hence it is proved that demand for money will be always equal to supply of money. There is no overproduction or underproduction. Now suppose that K and R are constant. We are assuming K and R will be assumed to be constant. But money supply has increased from 2 lakh to 4 lakh rupees. Then what we have seen, we have said that whenever there is increase in the money supply, price level will also increase and become equal to the proportion by which money supply is changing. So money supply is doubled from 2 lakh to 4 lakh. So what should happen? Your 1,000 price should increase from 1,000 and it should become 2,000 per quintal. That is what we have seen. So if this is clear, if it is thus clear that if K and R remains constant, price level increases in the same proportion as there is increase in the quantity of money. We can prove it with the example. The same example, we can prove it that if your that the money income has increased from 2 lakh to 4 lakh, then what will be the value of P? You can put the value here in this equation. The price instead of 2 lakh, it should be 4 lakh. So what we'll get instead of 1,000, we'll get a 2,000. So if the quantity of money is doubled, your price will also double and your value of money will be halved. Now, another thing that is included in the cash balance approach is that people are also keeping money in another form. Since people hold a part of their money income in the form of bank deposit also. So the Pigu's equation may be represented or restated in the following ways. This is going to remain same. We have seen P is equal to KR upon M is the basic equation of Pigu. And what we have to add? Bank money. So how much money is there in a bank? How do we come to know? C plus H multiplied by 1 minus C. That will give you the money available in the bank, where C indicate proportion of cash which people keep in a legal tender. If you remember, while discussing the concept of money supply, we have seen that C is currency in circulation. That is the amount which is issued by the government authority, legal tender money. And 1 minus C is the proportion of bank balance held by the people, that is bank deposit. So if total money is C and H indicates the cash reserve held by the bank against bank deposit. See, H is sometimes also referred as a high powered money. Now H is the money which bank is going to keep in the form of a cash reserve. Like we have to keep maintain our balance with the bank, same way bank has to maintain balance with the Reserve Bank of India. So RBI or central bank is asking commercial banks to maintain certain reserve, that reserve has to be maintained in the form of cash. So C plus H multiplied by 1 minus C will give you the bank deposits or bank money which is available. That is why the equation will become from P is equal to K R upon M. It will be converted, or it will be restated. If bank money is involved, then C plus H multiplied by 1 minus C has to be added into this. So this will be your cash balance approach, including your bank money as well as the money which is held by the public. So that's all for the today's class, and we'll be discussing about the further cash balance approach in next class. Thank you very much.